Most people think you need incredible aim to be a good sniper, but today I'll show that with proper technique, you can land headshots without even moving your crosshair. So the first tip I have for you guys today is going to be pretty fundamental to the entire game of Strinova in general. This is not just for snipers. And that tip is to abuse your third-person camera. Unlike similar games like Valorant or, I don't know, Counterstrike, this game has a third-person camera, which we can use to gather information about what's happening on the other side of a corner without actually exposing our bodies to any danger. In those other games like Valorant and Counter-Strike, you have a first-person camera all the time, so in order to gather information about a spot, you need to be exposed to that spot. But in this game, you don't need to be exposed to the areas that you're trying to scout out. Now, the catch about playing in this way where you scout with your camera and not with your body is that your body will be safe, but so will your enemies because, well, you can't shoot through walls. That's not how this works. So you do eventually need to come around the corner yourself, scope in, and take your shot. And the key part there that we're going to focus on right now is the need to scope in, which brings us to our next tip, which is to buy ADS speed as early as possible and always. Because if you're playing in a way where you're abusing your camera to peek, then you will eventually need to peek out with your body, aim down sight, and shoot. And you want that aim down sight action to be as short as possible. And now here we go with another key, core, fundamental thing to understand about sniping is that when you aim down sight, you are not actually going to shoot a perfectly accurate shot until the little red dot is perfectly in the center of your screen. If you shoot before it's in the middle, your shot is still going to be subject to bloom. You may miss. So next thing you want to do is take some time to practice the timing of how soon you can take your shot and have it be accurate. Okay, and one last key core fundamental to understand about sniping is that whenever you take a shot, you have to rechamber, but you can do this rechambering action while stringified. So if you're ever rechambering, you should just always be stringified. Same thing goes for aiming. If you're reloading, you can do that while stringified. So you should always be stringified while rechambering or reloading. So with a bit of practice, you want to work up some muscle memory that helps you to know exactly when you can take your accurate shot. And you also want to have muscle memory where you're remembering to stringify after you take your shot. Okay, now let's take all 4 of those key fundamental mechanical tips that I gave you guys and combine them into one fluid action that looks like this. We're hidden behind a corner, we've scouted an enemy, and now we need to expose ourselves with our body, scope in, take a shot, stringify, and then hide back behind the corner. That was the slow motion version, but here it is actually fast and how you would use it in a real match. And that technique right there is the one that I showed you at the very beginning of the video. And what's crazy about it is that I'm not moving my crosshair at all. I do, while I'm safe behind the corner, I do put it in an initial position that I have memorized. But after that, I'm not moving my crosshair at all. The only thing I'm doing with my mouse is right-clicking to scope in, left-clicking to shoot. Everything else is just my movement. Now, you don't have to have a plus sign shaped crosshair to do this. I've seen plenty of top players and top snipers with just like a single tiny little dot in the center of their screen that they're using, or maybe a circle with a hole in the middle like a donut. You can use those kinds of crosshairs. I just like using the plus shaped crosshair because it can kind of help me to vertically align with where I want to be. Now, I will put my crosshair settings in the video just in case you guys want to copy exactly what I've got, but use what's comfortable for you. I just use this because this is what I think is helpful. If you like to have a dot, then you can do that. If you want to have a donut, you can do that. If you want your crosshair to be shaped like a heart, I don't think you can do that in this game, but you know, in some other games like Counter-Strike and Valorant, people did that, and if you could do that, that would be fine. I wouldn't tell you not to do it. I'm just saying that this crosshair that I use, I've specifically set up to help me pre-aim these positions hidden behind corners so that I can peek out and get a really fast snipe. And if you do this technique right here, you're probably instantly going to be more threatening than basically every other sniper in the low ranks. Every other sniper in the low ranks, like bronze and below, they're just going to be standing out here with they're going to be peeking with their body, basically. They're going to be staring at a corner, waiting for you to come around and take their shot. And, I did land my shot. Like, it's possible to do things like that. But if you can get the jump on people by abusing your camera to peek out, take a tiny little shot. Even if you miss, even if you suck, you might miss, but you're only exposed for like half a second. So that's why you're going to be so much more threatening than every other sniper in your rank when you do this at low ranks, because low rank snipers are just going to be exposed all the time, basically waiting for someone to kill them. But you're going to be hidden. You're going to be the one waiting to kill somebody else. Now, one thing to keep in mind with this technique is that the distance from your enemy matters. So let me show you that right now my crosshair is like so that the edge of the cross is on his head. And that I've worked that out. So that's like a nice motion for me. But this guy who's way further away, I actually need kind of the middle of the cross to be on his head for me to land the... Oh. I missed. I shot Bloom. I shot too early. Okay. So I actually need the middle of my crosshair line to be on his head. And I'll explain why after I just show you right there that it did matter. Like I needed to have my crosshair, basically the center of my crosshair needed to be closer to his head when they're further away. And the center of my crosshair needs to be further from the head when they are closer to me. And the reason for that is because the closer someone is to you, the more your own movement makes them move relative to your camera. You can see that this guy right here, he starts off in the center of my screen, and it doesn't take very long for him to be completely off of my screen. Compared to this guy, way 10 million miles away, like, I mean, he's still moving on my screen, but it's like barely moving compared to the guy who's like really close to me. So that's why when someone's a little closer to the angle, you need your crosshair further from their head, the center of your crosshair further from their head, because your movement is going to make them move relative to your screen a little bit more. Compared to when they're way far away, your own movement is not going to make them move that much. So your crosshair doesn't need to be that far from their head. The center of your crosshair, that is, doesn't need to be that far from their head. Now, one more really cool, honestly kind of fun tip to use is that after you take your shot, you want to stringify, right? And you want to stringify as soon as possible. So you want to work up that muscle memory, like I said, to immediately stringify. But there's a trick that you can use to always stringify after you take a shot as soon as possible. You're going to stringify after the shot as soon as possible every time. And the way you achieve this is, first of all, you do need to go to your settings and change one of your settings. You need to have your sidestepping mode set to hold. By default, it's on toggle, but you want it to hold. So that makes it so that when you hold down your stringify button, you will be made of paper, but when you let go, that's when you go back to normal. And what that allows us to do is hold the stringify button, then scope in, and I'm still holding the stringify button. I still have my stringify button held down, but I'm scoped in, so I'm not made of paper. And now when I shoot, my stringify button is still held down, and I just get the free instant re-stringify after the shot. And you can just do this over and over and over. Now, the reality is that when the higher level up that you go in the game, you need to jump around a bunch, and you're not always going to be able to have this perfect setup where you're just stringify, scope in, shoot, get the re-stringify. Like, you're just not always going to be with your feet on the ground, because when you're jumping around, you cannot actually use this technique. So do be aware that this, you still have to get that muscle memory down of stringifying after you shoot, because you're not always going to be able to rely on this special technique to just hold it down all the time. Furthermore, you don't want to over rely on this technique. You kind of like the best spots where it's going to be the most useful, and the reason why I said it's kind of fun sometimes is like when you're caught in a terrible situation with no cover and you just have to fight somebody because they're in your face or running at you. They have an angle where they need to fight you, or where they are able to fight you, and you have no cover. Then that's when, like, the best case scenario for this technique. You can just stringify, do a little jig, take your shot. You might even you can have the bloom if you're too nervous and you shoot too soon, but you get the free re-stringify. So I mean, you at least have a fighting chance in those terribly awkward scenarios. Okay, now let's say you've ranked up a bit, you got through bronze, maybe you're getting to silver, something like that, and it's getting a little tougher. These snipers are just waiting for you to peek out, and even though you're only peeking for like one little half a second, they're still getting you. Okay, that's normal. What you can do to counter players who are doing that is to, instead of just walking out on the ground and shooting, you can jump out of the corner and shoot. And you can use the exact same technique that I use when I'm doing the grounded peek. You can pre-place your crosshair. The only difference when you're gonna do the jumping out shot is that you gotta place your crosshair a little lower. So you just gotta, with your own personal crosshair that you've set up, you gotta memorize where to pre-place it relative to their body so that when you jump out, your crosshair is gonna land right on their head. So for me, it's about right here. Now you do need to think about the timing of when you're going to shoot. If you're going to shoot at the apex of your jump, then you need your crosshair a little bit closer to their body because you're going to shoot pretty soon. And if you're going to shoot closer to the end of your jump, then you can place your crosshair a little further away. So I've already pre-memorized where I place my crosshair if I'm going to do a quick jump, if I'm going to do a jump and shoot near the end of my jump, or if I'm just not going to jump at all. Now one more extra little bit of flair to add in to the end of the jump shot peek is that you can use your double jump to get back into cover. Also, you can glide after your double jump to really get back into cover really fast. Okay, now do remember that you have to hold a directional button before inputting your double jump, otherwise you're not going to get back to cover that quickly. So the exact sequence of button presses, after I'm in the air and I'm scoped in, after I take my shot in the air, the order of buttons that I'm consciously telling myself to push is I'm making sure that I press my movement key to go in the direction that I want before I press my jump key. I'm deliberately like making sure, like specifically this order, a directional key, then my jump, and then my stringify. And of course you want to push those three buttons as quickly as you can in sequence, but it needs to be in that order. Otherwise you're going to go back to cover. You're going to kind of get a vertical secondary jump and then kind of slower glide back to cover. It's not going to look that smooth, but if you deliberately push your directional button before your jump and then you do the glide, you're going to just look super slick flying back like hella safe behind cover. Okay, now one thing to keep in mind is that sometimes you're going to see this red circle that shows that even though your crosshair might be placed on, someone's head, your shot is actually just going to hit the wall or something else right in front of you. And what you need to realize is that this red dot actually shows where you're going to scope in when you scope. So normally when you scope in, wherever your crosshair is placed, the center of your crosshair is placed, that's where your scope's going to go. But in situations where the red dot is showing you something else, once you scope in, your crosshair is actually going to snap back over to here. Okay, and that is something that can affect when you have these preset like crosshair lineups. You might be thinking like, what the heck? I have this like preset lineup that when I jump out, it should always like perfectly land me approximately near their head. Well, what can happen sometimes if you scope in too soon before you've cleared that corner, you're going to scope in and it's going to move your crosshair over onto the wall or the corner that you were trying to peek around. So that can, if you're noticing that like sometimes your like preset aim setup it doesn't feel right sometimes, it's probably because you're scoping in too soon and you're not actually clearing the corner before you scope in. I did say that I would show my crosshair settings, so here's what I use. If you guys are really interested in crosshair stuff, then I actually had a fun time like setting this up perfectly for myself. So maybe if you guys want to talk more about crosshair settings, then you can let me know what you think in the comments. If you guys give me some really good thought-provoking comments, then maybe I'll have to make a whole nother video talking about it. But for now, you can just copy my crosshair settings. But truthfully, you can use any kind of crosshair that you are already comfortable with, and you just have to memorize your own crosshair placement that helps you with these little pre-positioned crosshairs for your different types of peaks. Okay, now let's do another tip for hitting moving targets. When you're trying to aim at a moving target, you want to use your movement to actually match the way that they're moving, just to make your aim a little easier. Since you're the sniper, you want to make your aim as easy as possible, because landing shots is what's most important for you as a sniper. Because technically, when you match the movement of your enemies, it's making them move less relative to your screen, but it also makes you move less relative to their screen. So technically it does make you an easier shot for them, but again, the thing is that you're a sniper, so the most important thing is landing your shot. It doesn't matter if you're making it a little easier for them, because they don't have a one-shot weapon, you do. Okay, now let's talk about shooting at opponents who are stringified. Hitting stringified opponents is actually extremely hard. I will show you an example. Okay, wait, let's get some long range guys in here. All range, okay. Now, opponents who are really far away and stringified, oh my gosh, I actually landed the shot. Okay, it's extremely hard to land those kinds of shots, guys. It's like literally 10%, feels like less than 10% chance to land a shot from this far away. Even if you use your movement to make it a little easier for yourself, it's just really hard. Like, I mean, I know you just saw me land 2 shots, but I'm probably going to miss the next, like, 20 if I really sat here and, like, I'm even going to stop talking so I can really focus, and you guys will see. Like, it's so hard to land these shots the further and further away that they get. Okay, now as you can see on the closer up targets, that's when you actually are more likely to land your headshot on somebody who is made of paper. 2 little tips I want to give you guys that you need to know about when you're fighting people who are made of paper. Number 1, if they are for some reason not facing you while they're made of paper, the back of the neck is actually counts as a headshot for some reason. That whole back of the neck area counts as a headshot. That's not going to come up very often, but hey, it's something for you to know. And now this is the big tip for hitting people who are stringified. Aim for their hands, guys. Just don't go for the glory of a headshot. Try to get the hands. At least it's a little more consistent to land some damage on these guys. And again, of course, the closer they are, the even easier it becomes to really land a shot on somebody's hands while stringified. I mean, that felt like a good shot, but again, he's so freaking far away. It's just so hard to consistently land these shots on stringified people from so far away. But if I aim for the hands, then at least it is somewhat more consistent to get some damage out. Now, this is something that feels really basic, and you should already know it. I almost didn't say this tip, but you always want to take fights when you're peeking around a corner and you're peeking to the right, because it's just easier to see what's going on to your right. You can have these nice little perfect lineups to do these tricks that I was showing you before. I just missed twice, but it doesn't matter. But when you try to peek at somebody who's to your left, it's not quite the same, because you can't, like, you know, I could have a perfect lineup to where I know where I want to put my crosshair and, like, peek out. But the thing is that when you use your camera to peek, like, your crosshair is going to be way over here, and you want to pre-place it in the correct position. But what happens is now this wall is in the way, so it's harder to use these techniques on people who are to your left because of the way that the camera and your gun come from the right side of your character rather than the left. You can still do it, though. It's just a little harder because, like, again, you can memorize, you want to put your crosshair about here, and then you can do the peek. But the thing is, as you're making the movement, like, you lose sight of the target, so it can be harder to get that lineup. But if you just, like, you want to have it here, but your crosshair's over here, so you just got to use, like, your intuition to, like, move it to the place that you need, it needs to be approximately, and then you can try to take the shot. But it's much less reliable because it's just a lot harder to do. You can practice it, though, and you can get good at it. But it's not something that I think is super urgent for you to learn just to, like, start out being a decent sniper. Just focus on the right side peaks to just start out being a decent sniper. Okay, and the very last thing that I'll leave you with is a small tip about playstyle. And you'll notice that for the most part, I'm just focusing on like giving you a bit of knowledge, some mechanics, some little techniques that you can use, but I'm not really telling you how to like play, how you should be going about each decision that you make in a match. And that's because I'm still learning too, and I don't really feel that I'm qualified to give you guys good information on that kind of thing, but I am still going to give you just a small statement to give you a starting point to like have a nice reliable playstyle as a sniper. You need to remember that staying alive and getting value is what you want to do, because when you die, your contribution to that round is over. And if you just think about that while you're making your decisions, or maybe even reviewing your own matches, then that's going to help you to understand what kinds of different decisions you should be making. You should be making the decisions that allow you to maybe get some damage, but also allow you to stay alive. If you made a decision that makes it so you have to die for making a mistake, then that might not have been the best decision. I would only make decisions where I like have to land a shot or die if I was out of options. If there was no option to just run away and live, something like that. And now again, I don't want to give too much tips on playstyle because I'm still learning myself. I hope this video helped you understand some simple techniques that you can practice to improve your snipes. Be patient as you work to implement this new information into your gameplay routine. Be patient with yourself when you make mistakes, and be patient inside of your own matches. To become a good sniper, patience is all you need.